Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining our second installment in the AI Meets Integration series. Today's topic is GenAI's impact on integration workflows. Our speakers today are Ashwin Ramachandran, one of our SVPs of Product Management at Precisely, as well as Brittany Schultz, one of our Product Marketing Managers. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Ashwin and Brittany. Hey, Ashwin, thanks so much for joining me today. I'm really excited to be talking to you about Gen AI and how it's going to impact integration.
Yeah, super
Um,
exciting. I mean, it's all the rage at this point, right? So I can't wait to chat with you about it.
exactly, yeah. And I feel like that actually kind of leads me into my first question about this because there is a lot of buzz that surrounds AI in general and Gen AI specifically. So, from your perspective, how do you feel like it's actually going to change the way that organizations think about integration today?
I think integration will grow in importance. Integration's always been important. If you look at data integration and original ETL style paradigms that were in service of making data that runs your business more accessible to lines of business, less technical stakeholders who need to make decisions off of that data.
Mhm.
Gen AI just increases the urgency with which organizations need to define and implement a scalable integration policy
Yeah.
that supports the needs of their business going forward. Even in the analytics age and the age of modernizing applications, we've talked in the past about how it becomes more important that you're operating off of current data so that
Yeah.
you're actually making decisions off of current information. With AI, it's super important because you have all these negative externalities you may need to prevent against
Mhm.
hallucination, biased decision making. And so that's, I think, where the change comes in. Not that integration becomes less important or it's not a focus area, but because it needs to start with integration. I
Right.
use this analogy all the time, right? Integration are the pipes routing water in your home. If you want to do new things with water, you need to make sure your pipes are set up for it. And so
Yeah.
that's how I view it, really.
Yeah. And I think that that even kind of applies to that garbage in, garbage out analogy as well. If you're dealing with bad data, then you're going to get bad results.
Yeah, and I think that really speaks to what we talk about when we think about data integrity. Data that's accurate. So you don't have two versions of Brittany, that appear as different people to your business.
Right.
Um, it's complete. So you're not missing data. You don't have blind spots in your decision making, and it's got the necessary business context to make informed decisions, right? The integration piece feeds into whether or not you're pouring garbage into your system and getting garbage out.
Exactly. And then what do you think are going to be some of the top use cases and trends where Gen AI is probably going to make the most immediate impact when it comes to integration and data pipeline creation?
I think to me, actually getting a better understanding, takes sentiment analysis, for example. Being able to take natural language and infer sentiment, context, and make that actionable for the business, super important. I think building pipelines, no one really wants to be in the business of building pipelines.
Yeah.
That's a pretty rote operation that doesn't provide a whole lot of value to the business. Customers want to spend time analyzing their data, making decisions off of it, and asking it questions around the key topics in their head. And so I think Gen AI and agents and agentic AI are going to go a long way towards speeding up the time to value
Yeah.
while maintaining an important human in the loop safety guardrail. Because hey, AI might get you 80% of the way there, but 80% is still a significant performance benefit over nothing, over no acceleration, right? And so that's going to continue to grow in importance. And I think as models get better and our ways of using it and providing more context to these models get better, that's going to continue to increase in like the success rates of automated pipeline building, issue remediation, etc.
Yeah. So as automation and, human in the loop being less present, more just like, okay, we're double checking that everything's working properly, becomes more and more commonplace. I mean, there's a lot of risks that come along with something like that. So how should teams be balancing all of the potential that comes with something like Gen AI or agentic AI, with challenges around things like governance, reliability, security, stuff like that?
Yeah, I think my answer may echo what I said in the first question, which is with every new initiative, the challenges of governance, reliability, security, they're not new to Gen AI, right? And they ultimately boil down to having solid data management practices and organizational practices under the covers. Now, Gen AI does introduce some new things that we have to grapple with, things like bias in your models, things like hallucination, right? And so I think, again, coming back to having a comprehensive view of your data, having the right governance policies in place to make sure that people who have access to data are actually authorized to have access to that data, and having the right security policies in place to make sure models cannot operate off of data that they should not be privy to. They continue to grow in importance, right? So I think my guidance on this would be, in terms of balancing the potential with the challenge, you really have to do a risk benefit analysis. Define your end use case. What is it that you want to deliver? Gen AI may be the solution to deliver your ultimate business outcome. And then get an understanding of, hey, what are the biggest challenges and go address that. Like, is the reward of this business initiative
Yeah.
outweighing that risk? And that might be a good place to start, right? You don't want to boil the ocean with these things. Really focus on how can you tightly scope a project that yeah, how can you tightly scope a project that delivers value to the business in a short turnaround time that gives you the confidence to go and then tackle something a little bit bigger.
Yeah. And it sounds like with what you're saying, I mean, it's so much more than just the tools, than the Gen AI tools and the agentic AI tools themselves. It's about people, it's about process. There's a lot more that goes into the culture around this than just making sure that you have the right vendor or the right tool.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, all of these kinds of initiatives, whether it's modernization, application migration, database modernization, cloud, like data warehouse modernization to cloud native, like embedding Gen AI within your business operations, all of these require really solid cultural practices as well, programmatic, a programmatic approach to driving change, because if you let these things run away, you're never really going to deliver that step change to your business.
Yeah.
Oftentimes you can end up with a lot of thrashing, low quality outputs. And once you have low quality outputs, the ROI just plummets.
Yeah. And I'm sure that especially because of how, IT budgets, they're remaining static, but more of that budget is going towards AI projects. So I think it's even more important that you're doing things that are going to get you that better ROI, those quick wins faster.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, yeah.
100%.
So what are some pitfalls that you think put people into that category? Like what should people be avoiding as they're trying to onboard these new tools and practices?
I think having a clear understanding what the outcomes are. What are the
Yeah.
metrics that define a successful outcome? It starts from that. And what I mean by that is people don't just build integration routines and architectures just for fun, right? Or for the sake
Right.
of doing it. To your point before, budgets are flat and you got to do more with less.
Mhm.
And so what that really comes down to is what are the outcomes that you want to drive and how does that impact or inform what you need to do from an integration perspective? Are you better serviced by a virtualization architecture? Are you better serviced by a cloud native ETL stack? Are you better serviced by near real time data availability? And so once you define that, you can then put in the integration patterns that are going to allow you to achieve what you want. You'll notice my answer is no different from what it has been in the past because
Yeah.
the fundamentals are fundamental, right? And so what I would say here is from a pitfall perspective, don't assume what got you here is going to get you there. And second of all, we talked about it before, identify a really meaningful scope that you can act upon, deliver upon, and show ROI as your first target. Because if you don't have that, you don't inspire trust and like a real path to success in your cross-functional stakeholders, your leadership, and that may put these kinds of projects at risk, right? So really be disciplined about defining those metrics, not just defining the metrics, understanding how that impacts the way our business has been operating to this point, and then understand what do you need to change, what needs to change, what doesn't need to change, and how can we quickly scope a tightly defined, whatever it is, proof of concept, minimum viable product, etc., to show that success to your business and your leadership.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, they're the ones who are writing the checks, right? So,
Yeah, right. And honestly, why are we wasting our time if we can't show return?
yeah.
Demotivates our teams too.
Especially, and I feel like that's even more important because, like, I don't have an exact stat here, but I have read a lot of research that, like, people are really excited to try AI projects, but they aren't necessarily succeeding as they're, like, trying to get into this.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, to that point, right, I think there's still a lot of uncertainty in certain, within certain teams as, hey, where do we even start? This,
Yeah.
this space is so new and it's changing so fast that as soon as you've gotten a handle on what exists, the paradigm changes, right? And so I think that's where partnerships come into play too, right? Don't try to attack it on your own. Find partnerships, whether that's with ISVs like Precisely, the hyperscalers like AWS or GCP or Azure, right? Um, that's really where you can get that step change. Folks who are this is their job, is to help customers make sense of this thing, right? Is
Yeah.
not, don't try to just attack it on your own. I think there's strength in partnership.
Sure. And that probably increases confidence in projects moving forward if you can like go to your business leader and say like, "Hey, not only is this working, but we're working with like vendors and partners who are going to ensure our success and they're going to make sure that like we're delivering against your business objectives."
Yeah, and
That's
like
really
look,
important.
and that's another way to think about it too, right? Is it mitigates risk, right?
Yeah.
You've got experts who do it. They may not understand your business fully, but that's where partnership comes together, right? You marry their expertise with kind of your understanding of your business, your metrics that you're trying to drive, and you go from there.
All right. So, final question here. If you're thinking like a couple years in the future, how do you see the relationship between AI and integration evolving? Again, is it going to be super, super different as we enter this Gen AI, agentic AI era?
I think some of the trends we've been seeing will certainly accelerate.
Yeah.
You look at the way user experiences have the potential to be revolutionized, and that means that there's been this trend of integration personas getting less technical, over the past 10 to 15 years. Everybody wants data, not just for static dashboards, but for ad hoc querying, for, line of business inquiries. But there's still been this learning curve that folks have had to navigate. Hey, I need to understand how tool X gets me access to data Y and how to aggregate that down and get the right dimensions of my data. The ability to leverage natural language and agents to then go build out the integration routines you may need is like certainly going to accelerate productivity.
Sure.
On the integration side, we talked about this before. People don't really want to be spending time debugging issues and tweaking their integration pipelines. They want their integration pipelines to be resilient. They want them to be quick to stand up
Mhm.
and explainable. And I think leveraging AI agents who can understand past performance, understand, hey, this is a set of best practices to undertake when you run into issues, and having that feedback loop in place will introduce opportunities for things like folks like production operators to spend less time focusing on making sure their pipelines are up and running and servicing their business, and more time on actually delivering higher impact deliverables to their business, right? And so
Yeah.
to me, I think one, you can actually start to attack shadow IT by having, an enterprise-wide integration solution that's deployed, centrally managed, well governed, and giving greater access to a variety of user personas through natural language and agents that do the work on behalf of those line of business stakeholders. And then number two, technical user personas are going to get an uplift. They're
Yeah.
not going to have to go and mess around, in a bunch of logs and read a bunch of manuals and knowledge base articles to figure out how do I fix this production down emergency at 3 in the morning. They can instead have an agent that takes care of that and then have a conversation with that agent to provide direction as it makes sense. And so their jobs should get easier, right? And that's my
Right.
expectation in the next few years.
Yeah. Well, I think that that sums it up really well. That's all the questions I had for you today, but I do want to take the time to thank you so much for joining with me. I feel like this was
Awesome.
really insightful, and I think people are going to get a lot out of this. Thank you so much to our speakers for diving deeper into Gen AI and its impact on integration workflows. If you're interested in seeing more conversations like this one, you can check out our third installment in the series, Delivering AI Ready Data in Real Time. If you'd like to go deeper into the topic of AI and integration, hop on over to precisely.com to see more demos, white papers, and case studies. If you're interested in a conversation with some of our Precisely experts around this topic, you can go to precisely.com/contact for a 30-minute personalized demo. Thank you again for joining this session and have a great rest of your day.